Hasbro explores the unknown. Here's your look at the Hasbro Power Rangers Lightning Collection, Lost Galaxy Red Ranger. This 6-inch Lightning Collection Lost Galaxy Red Ranger figure features premium paint and decorative details inspired by the show, with over 20 points of articulation for high posability, swappable heads to display the Ranger with or without his helmet, Quasar launcher and Magna talon accessories with blast effect piece and an extra pair of hands, more ways to play and display. Go Power Rangers! Before we jump into the review of the Lost Galaxy Red Ranger, obviously, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the figure stands. I'd like to as well thank the folks over at Hasbro that provided the sample of the Lost Galaxy Red Ranger that we could have a look at in this review. Taking the tape measure right to the very top of his helmeted head sculpt, the figure does possess 2 head sculpts, but we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a second. The figure stands 6.2 inches in height, quickly switching that to centimeters, revealing that the Lost Galaxy Red Ranger is 15.8 centimeters tall. It seems we've been on a real Power Rangers kick as of late. Because of that, we have a couple of figures we can compare next to the Lost Galaxy Red Ranger. Starting first with the Zeo Green Ranger. And then just recently, we also look at the SPD Pink Ranger. Now, proportionately, and the same size, I would say, as the Lost Galaxy Red Ranger and the Zeo Green Ranger. In fact, the figures almost look like they're using similar molds. I'm guessing they probably used the same arms and then just changed the parts of the glove. Now, the 2 figures are clearly still bigger than the SPD Pink Ranger, which so far is the smallest of the figures that we've looked at from the Lightning Collection line. Pretty cool accessories to come include with the Lost Galaxy Red Ranger. Let's have a look at those right now. Starting first, he comes with his Magna talon. As you can hopefully see here, all molded in gold plastic with just a little bit of additional white added to the handle. I do also like the gold accented on the inside of the black, which is only featured on one side of the talon. It does have some additional scripture there scrolled in onto the side of the blade. And it's again a nice little version of the talon. Now you can go ahead and you can either display this obviously in his hands. Either one of his hands would certainly serve the job fine. You can either fit this into his hands on either side like that. One hand is actually, this hand here is a little bit looser, but you can swap it out for a different one instead. Or what you can also do too, providing you move the arm out of the way, is you can also take the Magna talon and fit it into the holster located on the side of his leg. This is softer rubber, but it is a little bit of a tighter quarters when you slide that in place. And I am happy the fact that that slides in and it can be displayed on the side of the figure. The only thing I am a little worried about when we are talking about the articulation on the figure is the fact that when you are rotating it back and forth, it is going to be clipping against the side of the talon. And I don't know if that's going to start causing damage to the rubber there on the holster. But for the time being, let's go ahead and just remove that. We'll go ahead and put that to the side. We'll have a look at the larger of the accessories he comes included with. He comes also with some hands and a swappable head, but I know for the time being, I'm sure many of you guys will want to be seeing this. He comes included with a Quasar launcher. This is a nice piece, and equally large too. I mean, when you're looking at it, it almost goes to the shoulders of the Ranger. It's made of not a dense rubber, but it definitely has a little more softer feel to it than the actual figure plastic that they used. One side is finished. You can see the gold on the end of it. The other side, though, is open, almost allowing for something to be plugged in place. Wonder what that may be. It does have some nice detailing done in the gold, the red, the silver, and some nice striping, I would say, that's been effectively applied to the side. It almost even looks like it's a label. But what it does come included with is a blast effect. The blast effect looks like it's been done in a translucent orange plastic and then airbrushed over top of that in yellow. It is very soft, so don't have to worry necessarily about. I guess soft plastic could still poke somebody in the eye. They always really want to make these things softer materials, but in actual fact, you could technically still run on this, run and fall and land your eye on top of that. I'm sure it would still hurt. Anyways, you can go ahead and take this, and it fits just into that hole there, just like that. Because it is also softer rubber, I noticed that when you want to pull it out from that hole, it does have a little bit of friction that wants to stay behind. But like I said, it just fits in place like that. Now, to display with a figure, this is really interesting the way that they've done this. They give you a couple of different hands kind of suited for the job. I guess we'll kind of keep the figure down for the time being. He comes with a couple of gripping hands, but then he also comes with a flat hand, and he comes with just another variation of a gripping hand. These are all been molded in white plastic, as you can clearly see right there. But you want to really make use of this hand right here for holding the Quasar launcher. What you will want to do is just grab the figure, yank the hand from the forearm socket, and replace it with this hand right here. Then what you can do is take the handle portion, and you're going to kind of, it involves me actually kind of having to pry the fingers away from the palm just so I can get the handle in there. Do it a couple of times if necessary. Slide that in place like that. And then you can fit this on top of his shoulder. It's like one of those old style bazookas. And then you can take this other flat palm and literally you can palm the top of it. And you get a look that looks like that. It's neat the way that they've done that, because I'm sure if this figure existed in the 80s, they would have just had you grip the one hand of it, or the one handle of it with the one hand, and sort of would look like he's not really holding it. At least in this case, it actually looks like he's supporting the side of the Quasar launcher. And I think that's really effective. Again, if you wanted to, I guess I did technically have it facing the wrong way. It really should have gone this way right here, but you get the idea of it. But I think that's neat. I think they were really successful by giving you that flat hand, which normally on most figures, a flat hand would be something you would just dismiss completely. And yet it works so well when displaying it with the Quasar launcher. Let's go ahead and pop these off, or remove that. I guess technically I don't need this hand anymore either, so we can go ahead and just remove that and replace it back with the original hand that we started with. The last of the accessories, as of which we've all sort of looked at with the Lightning Collection figures, is of course the swappable head sculpt. Let's go ahead and pick that up right now. This is the alternate head sculpt that comes included with the figure for Leo Corbett. So if you wanted to, you can swap the head out like we've done with all the other Lightning Collection figures. You know what? In fact, let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's grab the head, pop it off the ball joint. Very large ball joints, I also might say, on all these figures. Then we'll go ahead and take the portrait for Leo, and we'll just pop it on the ball joint. Boy, that's a super tight fit. You get this head sculpt right here. Now again, I'm all for the idea that they give us these unhelmeted head sculpts. At the end of the day, generally for Power Rangers figures, I like to display them with the helmets, but I do appreciate the fact that they give you the alternate head sculpts as well. The paint on this is really quite good. Not only do you have a natural skin tone, but they also have airbrushed some like rouge area in the cheeks, and they have also painted in the eyes. Again, that's a great looking head sculpt. Kind of there's a little bit of purple that's around the areas of the eyebrows, but short of that, it is a really good head sculpt for Leo. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and pop this back off just for my... Actually, you know what? Just before we do that, the neat thing also about these helmets is because they don't look like they're part of a figure, you could technically just display in the figure's hands. They don't really give you the proper hands to hold them, because really the hands aren't designed to hold the helmets. But sometimes if you're lucky, you can kind of get the fingers just on the rim of the helmet, and you can display them like that. And a lot of times, when I try my best to just balance them on top of the hands, usually the helmet falls off onto the floor, and I have to go and pick it up. Anyways, let's go ahead and pop the head sculpt back off, and go with my preferred way of displaying these figures, pop it on to a nice satisfying snap. Looking at the detailing on the now helmeted head sculpt, a lot of this is actually being used with just the molded plastic. So when it comes for like the head, for example, you get a generally pretty clean looking red, and it's all because they're using the molded red plastic as opposed to having to paint it. The detailing, though painted in, say like the mouth, for example, done in the silver, the visor done in the black, the little green on the eyes, and the striping on the top, I must say is still cleanly applied. Especially like little small lines like this are always susceptible to bleeding off to the side, wandering off to God knows where, but usually just results in it looking quite messy on the head sculpt. And that's certainly not the case when we're looking at this one. Very nicely done on the head sculpt here. It is a little limited when it comes to the postability that we'll talk about in a second. Then when you get to the main body, there's a lot of things that are sort of misleading because you think that they're using a lot of the molded plastic. In actual fact, I think what they've done for the top of the torso is they've used the white plastic and then they've painted the red underneath this. This may also be the case when it comes to the arms as well, because when you look at the peg joint, let me just spin this around so you can see the inside of this. If you ever want to know if something's painted or molded, simply look to where the peg joint is. And you can see where the sunken in area of plastic on the inside that hasn't been painted is still white plastic. So in this case, it looks like the arm was all done in molded white, and then they've gone in there and painted this red. It's probably the more effective route of going this as opposed to having to paint the glove white. Because if you painted the glove white, white is always something that can be a real problem, having to paint on a figure. So probably what they have ended up doing was painting just the red on the torso area here, and like all the white is just stuff that's left behind from the mold. The black striping, that kind of looks a little bit like Charlie Brown's shirt, if you ask me. The zigzag is generally clean. There's no real areas, maybe short of a few little spots, that have missed a little bit, but generally pretty cleanly applied here on the figure. Again, on the belt, you've got the section there painted in on the yellow. Now again, all of this is just painted in red. The one, though, breakup for all of this is I think they ended up using molded red plastic for the legs. The boots are separate pieces, so again, they probably could have just gotten away with using the white molded on the boots. But this area right here, they've used probably a molded red plastic. Because of that, the red doesn't quite align with the red that they used for the rest of the body. It's close, but it's just got a slight orange tint to it that looks a little bit different when you're looking at the red and, like I said, the figure's torso. Let's tackle the posability here on the Lost Galaxy Red Ranger. His head does rotate all the way around. Now, we've already seen how you can pop the head off and replace it with the alternate head sculpt, and you've got a really large ball joint underneath that. But there is also a hinge joint. Unfortunately, the hinge joint doesn't really help to move the figure's head any more than I feel just the ball joint. Again, you can rotate the head all the way around fine and good. You can hinge it back and forth fine. But again, like that hinge joint, I don't feel like really serves too much of a purpose, because just the size of the head, you can't really get a lot of stuff going from that hinge joint. Anyways, he does have the shoulder crunch similar to all the other Lightning Collection Power Rangers figures that we've looked at so far. So you can either lunge the arms forward a little bit more than what you normally would be able to do, or you can also do the exact same thing by bringing the arms further back. I know that looks a little strange though. In addition, you can also rotate the arms all the way around. I did notice actually that these socket joints are a little on the loose side, but you can rotate the arms all the way around. He has a swivel at the bicep. You can rotate that all the way around. He has a double hinge on the elbow. He doesn't have any articulation in the glove because, again, this is all molded white plastic. We saw the telltale indicator right there on the joint. And you can rotate the hand all the way around, whatever hand, of course, you decide to display him with. Let's talk a little bit about the torso. Upper torso ball joint. He has a lower torso crunch, so you can hinge that back and forth. While I am hinging it, though, I don't know if you can actually hear it. Probably can't hear it too much, but there's a little click sound. I wouldn't necessarily write off saying that there's a ratcheted joint, but there's definitely some resistance in there, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it just means that the figure isn't going to develop looseness over time. As for the legs splitting out, they can do that perfectly fine with the ball joints being used underneath there. You can bring the legs forward and back. He has 3/4 of the way up swivel in the thigh. You can rotate that all the way around. And then when it comes to his knees, you can bend those knees in a double hinge, which is a little bit harder to pull off when you've got such a large calf like this. He does have the articulation in the boot. You can rotate those all the way around. And yes, he does have articulation in the actual feet. Not only up and down, but you can also swivel these back and forth, like all the other Lightning Collection figures that we've looked at up to this point. It's a fun-looking figure. And again, one of the benefits of this particular figure is that he comes included with, of course, the Quasar launcher. And I think that's a fun touch that they included and gave you the appropriate hand to display that with. So if you want to display him with a little bit of extra firepower, Hasbro gave you the realistic means to be able to do that with that included flat palm. Something you normally would have just written off completely if it was included with any other figure. The Lost Galaxy Red Ranger might possibly be my favorite of the Lightning Collection Power Rangers that we've looked at so far. And I'm not just necessarily saying that because he's got a big giant Quasar launcher sitting on his shoulder, but it does help my swaying of liking this one just a little bit more. A nice touch is the fact that they included that flat hand. Although I wish in some ways the Quasar launcher could have attached to his shoulder somehow, because I just feel like it's too front heavy that a lot of times it wants to lean forward, sort of like what you're seeing here in final looks. The figure has been painted very cleanly, and a lot of that can be contributed to the fact that they're using the molded plastic and then just painting the red over top of it. Usually, a lot of times, companies, when it comes to painting white, tends to paint the white over top of the plastic, and sometimes that can develop a bit of a messy result. Because they ended up molding a lot of this in white plastic and just painting the red over top of it, the white remains the cleanest aspect of the figure, and still makes the figure look clean when you have it on display. This one has still the swappable head sculpt like all the other Lightning Collection Power Rangers we've looked at to this point. But again, like I think when it comes to my own personal preference at displaying these, I personally like to display the Lightning Collection Power Rangers with their helmets on. What is your favorite Power Ranger that we've looked at so far? Let me know down below in the comments section. Again, a big thank you to the folks over at Hasbro that provided the sample of the Power Rangers Lightning Collection Lost Galaxy Red Ranger. If you guys are new to this channel and enjoying all the content you've been seeing so far, and let's just say you haven't yet got around to doing it, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Turn the bell notification on, and yes, by all means, come back to this channel regularly, because we are going to be looking at some more Power Rangers toys. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.